All right, 5 o'clock. We'll call the Administration Committee to order of April 18th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Chair Cook,
Present.
Vice Chair Counter,
Present.
Supervisor Long,
Here.
Supervisor Bernie, and Supervisor Fiedler will just be a little late. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Our next item, approval of the minutes from Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Any changes to the minutes? No? All right, well, the minutes will stand. Public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment tonight? Doesn't appear that way. Anyone here for public comment? Any public comment? Oh, all right. We'll move on to our business items. First item is the financial reports for March 2023. Ken?
Yep, the March reports are in the packet. So we have our ARPA report that lists out all of the ARPA dollars, how we're spending that. All 17 million is allocated. A few of the projects are closed out, but most of them are still ongoing. We have our capital improvement plan projects. This is the list. All those are still ongoing. I don't think we've finished any of them out this early in the year yet. We then talk about sales tax and vehicle registration fees. Those collections are pretty much on target at this point. And then I was going to point out just a couple of things within the financial statements. Considering we're starting to talk about budget, I'd go into a couple of the more deep thinking pieces here. Let me get to where I wanted to show you. There's that first one. So within the default department overview, this is basically the things that's not allocated to any one department, but we have interest revenue. So if you look back at the prior years, we have a negative 414,021 and a negative 2 million in 2022. But we budget for a positive amount because we're supposed to have a positive amount of interest earnings. So I've explained this before, but it's been a long time, so I wanted to go back over it because it is such a significant size number. So the investments we have are mostly bonds, treasury note type things. So when we purchase those in an escalating market, when the interest rates are coming up, they end up with a decreased book value. So think about it this way. So we buy $1 million bond that has a 0.5% interest rate on it because that's the going rate at that time. It's a 2-year bond. And then a year later, we're still holding that bond, but now interest rates are up to 5%. And so we say, well, we want to sell this bond. Well, no one's going to give me $1 million for it because it's only going to generate 0.5% interest. It's only going to earn $5,000. They could take their $1 million somewhere else and invest for $50,000. So what they'd say is, well, we'll give you $960,000 for that bond. So the discount plus the interest that it's going to earn gets them back to about the same dollar amount. So it has a decreased book value now. It's worth $960,000 if I have to sell it today. So that's what's being reflected here is a lot of our investments were locked in at low interest rates, so they had decreased book values as interest rates rise. Now that bond, though, if we hold it to the maturity date at the end of the 2-year period, we still get $1 million from the bondholder. So we never lost any money. It just had a decreased book value during the time that we held it. And so that's what's being reflected by those negative numbers is decreased book values. So I didn't want you to panic and think that I'm losing millions of dollars because that's not the case. And I can point it out now because we finally turned the corner and we actually have positive now. We're at $277,000 positive through the first quarter. And so we're actually investing in things that are not decreasing in value anymore. So that's the one thing that I wanted to point out there. And then we'll jump ahead to the health insurance.
Just to follow
Yep.
up to that last one. Just so that it's clear, because you kind of ended it on a note as if you were investing in things that were losing value. It's strictly the book value, not necessarily the actual dollar amount then.
Yeah, Wisconsin limits local government what they can invest in. Very, very safe assets. We don't invest in any stocks. The county isn't allowed to invest in stocks. So yeah, all of the investments we have are very safe and secure, and they'll all hit maturity, and we get the original principal back.
Right. You didn't lose money. It was just it was valuated at is if you had to sell it short.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. The way you ended it sounded as if.
All
So
right. Thank you for the clarification. Yep. All right, on to health insurance then. What I look at the health insurance is I watch this line down here, because this is the claims cost and any cost we have on the health insurance. So fiscal year 21, we had 11.3 million. For fiscal year 22, we had 10.8 million. So that was a positive direction that we went. Our experience had actually gone down for claims. If you look at where we are for March, it's still early in the year, but we're about $80,000 lower than we were this time last year, which last year we had a positive year. And so that's kind of a trend that we're seeing on our health insurance right now, which is going to help us when we get to health insurance premium renewal. That our experience rate, and we kind of peaked there during COVID with higher claims, but it seems to be trending back downward now. Yep.
Seeing that, are we at a position, I don't know if we can talk about that during open meeting with this, but do we see the overall employment age? Are we seeing more of the people, more of the employees that are currently in the age demographics? Are we seeing that the majority of the employees are younger now than what they were a couple years ago, or where are we at with that part?
Well, relative to me, they're all younger now. So, I think the average age, fluctuates. That is one of the statistics that we see on our health insurance. It fluctuates a little bit, but it's fairly static. So, I get older every year, and they get younger every year. It's basically what I do notice. So I don't think age is affecting that at all. And then the retiree health savings. So this is the retirees that pay out that long-term sick leave payout. We're only at 36,000 so far this year. Last year at this time we were at 200,000. That's really, it can fluctuate greatly. And so that's not really a trend, although that's a positive amount to be at this point in the year. Those are the things that I wanted to point out to you in the financial report for March, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Any other questions? It doesn't look like it. All right, thank you. All right, our next item, resolution approving alteration of supervisory district boundary, City of Hudson, Town of Hudson. And Christine.
Good evening. So in your packet, you'll find a copy of the ordinance as well as a map that Brett did for us. But in November of 2022, the City of Hudson passed an ordinance to annex 5.75 acres into the City of Hudson Supervisory District 7, Ward 4, from the Town of Hudson Supervisory District 8, Ward 13. And the city is asking the St. Croix County Board to exercise their redistricting powers to annex this property into the City of Hudson. There are currently no voters in on this property anywhere. I know that it's not within this packet or any information that I received, but I did watch the meeting where it got approved, and there is some project development that is coming through at some point, but that's a whole different issue that would have to be approved. But right now they're just asking that it be annexed in, which I guess has been a long-term plan for this to be annexed into the City of Hudson.
All right, does anyone have any questions?
I'm just curious, why are they asking to redistrict this particular parcel?
Well, it was a request that came from the owner of the property. There's a development proposal coming for affordable housing project of 38 units. But when I watched the City of Hudson board meeting where they approved this, basically he said it's been part of their comp plan for years that this would move into the City of Hudson, and that he recommends that they do that. But the whole development is just a whole nother thing that would have to have public meetings, and it's not like it's coming anytime soon, but that was the reasoning behind it. That's all I really know. I didn't even know that till I watched it.
So the annexation is approved at the city level, where we're approving the redistricting part. So the annexation happens regardless. So typically, and Christine can probably confirm this, typically the clerk will want it redistricted to reduce the number of ballot styles. And so when you overlap another line, it would create a separate ballot style just for the people that live in that district. And so they'll ask for the boundaries to be moved just to avoid that extra expense and extra confusion.
Yes.
All right, anyone have any questions or discussion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the annexation, or the redistricting.
All right, motion by Supervisor Burning,
I'll second it.
second by Supervisor Counter. Any further conversation? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, resolution amending discretionary pay policy for healthcare campus. Audrey, I believe this is you.
Yeah. So we would like to update the call-in pay incentive in hopes of increasing our ratio of part-time and full-time employees versus our current on-call employees at the healthcare campus. The current call-in pay policy or the incentive is still needed. We still have a lot of pickup shifts that we need people to fill. However, so it's worked, but it's also created an unintended side effect. And that side effect is that people are moving from full-time positions down to part-time positions so that they can pick up those extra hours that are paid at an extra $5 an hour. So we're incentivizing people kind of in the wrong direction. So we'd like to update that to be paid by their FTE. So employees that are hired to be on-call employees would no longer receive that incentive. That's what they're being hired to do, is pick up those shifts. Employees at a 0.2 to a 0.5 would receive a $3 incentive, and a 0.5 to a 1.0 would receive a $5 incentive. So we're hoping not only to incentivize them to pick up those shifts, but also maybe incentivize them to consider moving into a higher FTE role, which will help us in the long run to fill those shifts and not need so many call-in shifts filled.
Motion to approve the resolution amending discretionary pay policy for healthcare campus.
All right, motion by Supervisor Burning, second by Supervisor Long. Any further discussion?
I just want to make a comment.
Yep, Supervisor Burning.
It was very well laid out in the packet, so thank you. I don't have any questions. It made total sense.
Okay.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, consideration of reclassification request to pool together facilities maintenance technicians 1, 2, and 3. Audrey.
So currently, there's 7.0 FTE allocated to facilities technicians, but those are split up. There's 3 for facilities tech 1 and 4 for facilities tech 2. Currently, we don't have any FTE assigned to the tech 3 position. That happened a couple years ago when they created the HVAC operations supervisor. They reallocated that tech 3 FTE to create that supervisor role. With the new facilities director, he would like the opportunity to be able to pool those FTEs together to hopefully fill that Tech 3 position in order to give added responsibilities, teach people how to gain leadership skills, and basically have kind of a career progression for people to move into different leadership roles.
Supervisor Long.
Can you explain a little more detail what you mean by pooling? I didn't quite follow that. Sorry.
Sure. I don't know if Ken can explain it better if you want, but
Yeah, so right now, Taylor can hire 4 Tech 1s, or 3 Tech 1s and 4 Tech 2s, and no Tech 3s. So what we want to do is say you can hire 7 techs, and they could be a 1, 2, or 3, depending on the level that they're able to advance in. But that's one of the key parts that Audrey was explaining, was the advancement opportunity. That's one of the things that we've identified at the county is to help with retaining employees. If we can have goals that are 2 years out where you're going to be able to move from a 1 to a 2 by completing certain tasks, establishing certain educational requirements, they have an incentive to stay and something to look forward to. And so that's one of the tools that we're using across lots of different departments, and this is the one for facilities that'll get us there.
Right. Whereas part of that, which is in the amendment here, is that we did update the job description to kind of follow along with that, to put in years of service as in certain positions before you can advance to the next position, or a gaining of skill sets before you can advance as well.
All right, any discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
All right, motion by Supervisor Long. Second. Second by Supervisor Burning. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, consideration of reclassification request for social worker to lead social worker in behavioral health division. Audrey.
Okay, this is very similar to a previous lead social worker that was just approved a couple months ago. The behavioral health recently acquired adult protective services and emergency services cases. Both have been on the increase in the number and complexity that they are having to deal with. And so having a lead social worker would take some of the work processes off of the current leadership team so that they can focus more on training and development and kind of some of those higher risk cases, whereas the lead social worker could then assist with the policy and procedure development, training of staff, coaching, and taking on assisting some of the other social workers with those difficult cases as well. Also provides a path for career progression, just like what Ken was talking about, building those leadership skills to hopefully then be able to move into leadership positions down the road.
All right. Any questions? Supervisor Cowner?
So if we're taking on and changing this position type to a different, is this going, and then, if I'm understanding you right, so they're going into a different level of different training or different category of training, and then if they're doing that, you're vacating a spot, how do we adjust for the vacated spot?
So we're moving an FTE from the case manager, social worker 1, social worker 2 position, and we're going to reallocate that FTE to this lead social worker position. So we're not really creating a new position, we're just reallocating from a social worker to a lead social worker. There is going to be a little bit of a difference to the budget on that because the lead social worker would be in a higher grade 67 versus grade 66 on the social worker. And the job description would be different as well. So you'd have to have a certain skill set and length of service kind of as a social worker to be moved into that lead social worker position. But we're asking for just the one FTE position on that.
We're just going to take a social worker and give them extra work.
Yeah.
They're still going to do everything they were doing before, but as the lead, they'll take on a little bit more responsibility. We're going to give more money to them. So.
More money, more responsibility. Yep.
All right, any other questions? Do we have a motion? All right, motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Cowner. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item number 6, resolution amending budget to utilize fund balance in 2023 and 2024 to fund public safety positions within the sheriff's office. So I think we all know that this is on our agenda basically because the one reason is the referendum failed to pass. Supervisor Shirley at the county board meeting had requested that he proposed an idea and requested that admin committee look at it. So I'm not sure if it makes more sense if you want to come up and share some thoughts about your proposal, or if it makes sense for Ken to provide some background first.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying that I drafted a resolution that's a starting point for discussion. So I started much smaller than Supervisor Shirley. You can expand it to whatever level you guys want to, but this is the framework that it would look like for that. And then I guess we can go to Supervisor Shirley, and he can talk about his proposal, and then come back and see where you want to be with the actual resolution then.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you want to just go up to the podium there so we can all hear you?
And I can scroll the screen if you need me to.
All right. Okay, so since our committee of the whole meeting, our asks from department heads actually was less than what we had in the referendum. So the total, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, from the committee of the whole was a total of $2,798,480 was the total for the positions that were actually asked for, not the 3.536507, which is what the referendum was for. So there was 6 positions that were not asked for, basically, at committee of the whole, to bring that number down. So in this spreadsheet here, I used that corrected number or corrected positions in order to come up with those dollar amounts. So we're talking about the $2,798,480 on there instead of that referendum. So like I said, in the committee of the whole, we have a lot of funding options to get this done. We have we have the interest or anticipated interest from the building of hopefully $2 million. We have the fund balance from 2022 of $3.5 million, and actually remembered that back in October we moved $1 million to the KIP to help with the building overage as well. So we actually have a lot of funding available that we can make this happen. There were a lot of questions at committee of the whole, and since then about the building costs, and if we took that interest money, are we going to be okay with the building itself? And I just wanted to kind of run through that quick, if I may. So the bids that came in, according to our last meeting, were $75,027,000 and some odd change for the building, which leaves us with a contingency of about $5 million. So if I'm doing my math right, that's a 7.5% contingency. And being someone in the construction industry, I personally would leave a project like this with a 5% contingency. So according to my math, we actually have an extra $1.2 million in there of contingency. So we have plenty of contingency in there, in my opinion, to cover any issues that we may have with the building, so that this interest should in no question be available to use. If you can scroll down, Ken. In 2023, what my proposal was to take half of what was asked for in the committee of the whole, which was, you might have to scroll back up, sorry, Ken. The 8 sheriff's deputies, 2 investigators, 4 correction deputies, 2 justice support, and the 1 CHIPS officer. Now, the 2 justice support are funded with ARPA through 2023, so we take those off the table for the rest of 2023 to get the numbers that I was working with there. So you go back down again. Sorry, Ken. So 2023 numbers, we would fund then that half. 2024, we would bump up to those positions that they asked for at the committee of the whole. So that cost for the remaining 6 months of 2023 would be $581,837. And I would propose that we fully fund that from fund balance. 2024, then our total cost for the full positions would be the 2.798480. And my proposal that I've sent everybody is that we would 75% fund that with bond interest and the 2022 fund balance, and we find 25% of that funding in the 2024 budget. So what that means is that with fund balance and interest, we would pay $2,098,860 out of that account, and we would find $699,620 in the budget in order to make that happen. So then scrolling down to 2025, again, assuming that everything stays the same, and yes, I know costs will increase a little, but for this exercise, we would in the 2025 budget, we'd increase that by 25%. So 2024, we'd cover 25% in the budget. 2025, we'd cover 50%. 2026, we cover 75%. So that by 2027, we could fully incorporate that in the budget without having to bite off that whole package all at once. With the full amount for half of those positions for the last half of 23, 75% in 24, 50% in 25, 25% in 26, that would cost us $4,779,557, which is actually down from what we talked about, or I talked about in the committee of the whole meeting. And so we have that $2 million of interest. We have 3.5 in the fund balance. So we have easily $5.5 million to help offset this cost of 4.779. So hopefully my my description made sense, and yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for that description. Are you willing to entertain questions from the committee?
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions for Supervisor Shirley? Yeah. Supervisor Connor.
I just wondered, as you were doing the calculations in this, did you consider anything as far as the hard costs for the, like, building operations? You know, the electric, everything has annually been going up on a consistent basis, especially right now with inflation and things. Have you added any of that into the calculations to try to offset so that we aren't cut short on some of those things?
Are you talking about building operations for the expansion?
No, I'm talking about, like, as we continue down the path, our utility bills go up, the cost of everything for operations, the cost for salt on the driveway, the cost for electricity, the cost for gas, the cost for sewer and water, everything, the operations, not just for here, this is countywide, so it's all the facilities, everything, and that's just one piece of it. I mean, then we're dealing with all of the other add-on things, you know, as far as, so then would that mean that we have an employee lock so that nobody is allowed any raises for the next 4 years? Things like that.
I think that's something to think about. You know, we think about that every year when we go through the budget process. But, you know, really at the end of the day, our task is to get the public what they need in public protection. I mean, that's really our number one task as supervisors, is to find a way to fund the sheriff's department. And, you know, I've heard from plenty of voters, not only in my district but in others, that you know, when the referendum went out, their clear message back to me was that we need to find a way in the budget to pay for that. We shouldn't be asking them for extra.
Supervisor Long.
Actually, I have a question for Ken. So in the last several years, what has been that net new construction number of that additional funding that we had available?
Yeah, we can anticipate on average about $1 million per year.
So basically, we're committing that $1 million starting in 2025 to the, in this, in your scenario. So that leaves us no flexibility for anything else? Am I interpreting that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges that I see with Supervisor Shirley's proposal. I agree with all of his math. He knows how to do math. So not everyone can, so that's quite a compliment. So, I mean, if we get $1 million a year, he's committing $700,000 a year, each year for the next 4 years to do that, which leaves us $300,000. If you remember our exercise, we had that much in inflationary cost expenses. So there'd be no increase, there'd be decreasing benefits every year for the next 4 years. And I see that as a huge problem for the county to be able to retain the workforce that we have. Yes, public safety is one of the priorities the county has, but it's not the only priority of the county. So you have to weigh everything together.
Supervisor Burning.
Ken, how much have we in the last decade under budgeted for sales tax revenue?
We under budget approximately $1 million per year on the sales tax. And then we take that excess, and we've done two things with it usually. We apply it to the debt service fund so that we can artificially lower the tax rate that year, so we'll burn the cash that way. Or we've moved it into the capital improvement fund, and we've been able to fund capital projects and avoid borrowing costs, thereby saving the taxpayers additional revenues or additional expenses.
A follow-up question to that. The sales tax revenue is able to be utilized for operations, correct?
Yep, and we do increase, so that $1 million increase is a combination of a sales tax increase and net new construction.
Supervisor Long.
I want to make sure I take an opportunity to thank Supervisor Shirley. We need these types of ideas and different ideas that we can kind of churn and chew, so to speak. So thank you for that. My main concern is there's a tremendous, to me, as a fiscal conservative, there seems to be a tremendous amount of risk in 2025 and thereafter in terms of not knowing how we're going to fund these positions. So is there, and I guess this is more a question for Ken, and maybe this is what you've done, is there a way to more slowly move in this direction and mitigate some of that risk by using some of that fund balance and
and I took Supervisor Shirley's proposal from the Committee of the Whole, and I created a smaller version of that, something that would be more manageable. If we want, we can jump to that, and I can explain where the similarities and where the differences are. So basically, we're going to be funding, by my projections, 4 positions that were in the referendum through our operating levy. So it would be 2 of the Justice Support Services, the CHIPS attorney, and an investigator position. So that's what I think we can afford out of our operating. So those are continually funded moving forward. So 4 out of the 24 positions. What I would propose then is that we could fund using cash balances, like Supervisor Shirley has suggested, for patrol deputies. And that was where the next need for the sheriff was. He wanted an investigator first and patrol deputy second. Other positions that are on that list, if they wait, they wait. I mean, we've been waiting for them for years as it is. I mean, the need has been there. We've had these positions asked for us before, and it's about prioritizing the resources that you have. But we can use $1 million of cash to fund it for the rest of this year and all of next year. And then at the end of 2024, the county board has two choices. They can either go back to referendum and ask for $600,000 to fund 4 deputies and lock those in then, or they can take it out of the operating levy at that point and fund them in 2025, which is still pretty close to the same $600,000, pretty close to the same annual cost that Supervisor Shirley was suggesting. So it delays the decision for another year about how you're going to do it moving forward. It does implement a much smaller footprint, but still a meaningful footprint where it's adding 1 additional patrol deputy to every shift, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Yep, Supervisor Long.
I know that the sheriff expressed some concern about adding deputies that weren't permanently funded. So do we have something, somehow we can address that concern?
Yeah, so the way I worded the resolution, let me scroll down to it. I said that we're going to ask the voters to approve at a referendum the additional $600,000, and that if not approved that way or by an alternate revenue stream, that we would reduce the number of deputies back down by those 4 positions through attrition. And so the sheriff was concerned about laying off any deputies. And so this language prevents that from happening. It acknowledges that if the county board at the end of 2024 says we are not funding those positions moving into 2025, that we would only do it through attrition.
I have a question.
Yep, Supervisor Bernie.
Are any positions subject to the county board approving a budget anyway? Every position throughout the county except for even mandated services?
Yes, I'm trying to make the sheriff feel good, though.
Well, right, I understand that. But this actually adds a little bit more. We don't do this with every position that we approve. I think this is more heartburn out there, heartburn language for anybody that's looking at applying for this position. I think it's a language game. I personally do not like it. I think we can do a better job of making these more solid. And quite frankly, Supervisor Shirley's plan allows us to ease into this without having to do drastic cuts or have anything looming over these applicants and other departments without, feeling like there's going to be gashes throughout the entire county employment base. I like his proposal a lot. It made a lot of sense. He did really good at math. I think what we did is in front of the voters or to the voters, we said to our residents and our constituents, this is a huge priority. And for us to dismiss that and say we're only going to add 4 patrol is, to me, I think it's shortchanging what we need to do for this county, considering the number of calls that are happening. I mean, we're putting out the number of calls weekly at the very minimum was what I was seeing on social media, saying, look at how overworked our deputies are. And that is the truth. They are extremely overworked. So I think we put it in front of the voters, asked them for extra money. They said no, but at the same time, to Supervisor Shirley's credit and others that went out and talked to our constituents, we did hear that there is a need for public safety and higher public safety, because I think I told this story before. I don't know if I said it publicly or not, but I ran into 2 city of Hudson police officers and a county deputy downtown late at night, and they were taking a break. And the deputy, and I can't remember who it was, what his name was, but he had said that was his first break in 11 hours, was getting to sit there and just decompress after a high-speed chase from Baldwin, where Two people came in from the metro area, stole a car in Baldwin, and ran it back. And of course, our deputies and the City of Hudson Police are not going to run it back. So I like this proposal. I think we owe it to our deputies, we owe it to our sheriff, and we owe it to the public to keep them safe, because calls are up, crime is up. We need to make it a priority. So I like it. I actually want to amend at some point in time, whenever we get to a motion, if there is one, I want to make it so that Supervisor Shirley's proposal is the body of this resolution.
So I want to take the chance also to thank Supervisor Shirley for bringing this forward. I agree, it's a great conversation. I think at the committee of a whole, I also kind of expressed some of my concerns about the way that we're funding this with future budget. We don't really know what's going to happen in the future. We can project that we're going to continue to grow, that we're going to have net new construction funds, but we just don't know that. And so it makes me very uncomfortable to commit those funds, especially since when we did that exercise this year at Committee of the Whole, we had very little money that was really in our discretion. And I fully agree that public safety is important. It's an important thing that the county does, but we do a lot of important things. And we also heard from other departments that likely do impact public safety outcomes, that they also are suffering and need positions. So it makes me really uncomfortable to commit all of that funding, that future budget, when really we don't even know if we're going to have that future budget. I think, and then coming back to the referendum, it was obviously defeated. I think we can interpret what that means, and I think there are some folks that feel that, and you talk to some of your voters, and they're saying, well, we defeated it for X because we think you should take it out of the current budget, but we really don't know what that is, and potentially some voters also voted against it because they feel there's other things that the county does that's important. So I think we're all speculating on why it was defeated. I think this proposal that Ken presented is a good compromise. It still makes me a little uncomfortable from a budgeting standpoint, but I feel like it shows that we're supporting the value of public safety. We are bringing positions on. We've talked about, when we're doing priorities, already bringing other positions like the investigator on, but it also reflects, in my perspective, a careful budgeting moving forward when we just have unknowns. So I think this is a good compromise, and I would be willing to support this resolution. Supervisor Long.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to argue the need. I think that's kind of a foregone conclusion. But while we need to be responsible for supporting public safety, we also need to be responsible, or fiscally responsible, to the taxpayers as well. And so that means not taking on too much risk in terms of the structural deficit that we might be looking at in 24 and 25 and thereafter. So I would also agree with Supervisor Cook that Ken's proposal is a good one. It kind of eases us into this, but it also points us in the right direction, the same direction that Supervisor Shirley is suggesting, which, so I like the alternative that's been presented in the resolution.
Other discussion? Do we have any motion?
I would move to approve the resolution as it's presented in the board packet.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Motion by Supervisor Long, second by Supervisor Fiedler. Further discussion?
Yeah, I have something.
Yep, Supervisor Burning.
So I'm going to support this resolution, but I want you to be prepared for counter offers in the actual board meeting. I think this is light. This is light. The sheriff's office needs it. They need it badly. And we can't afford to keep losing law enforcement applicants across the river either, because we can't staff properly or pay properly or meet what is like the pay that's over there. So I'm going to support this knowing, with all of you knowing full well, I'm going to bring amendments and more to the board meeting. So thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Sherman.
I will point out for you, this is a budget amendment because it's implementing this year yet, these 4 deputy positions. So it requires a 2/3 vote of the county board for ratification. Just so you know that it's a supermajority vote.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Ken, you said that there were other positions in 2024 beyond that you were funding elsewhere. One was CHIPS, and what were the other ones that you were funding?
Yeah, so that's the next thing on our list is the budget priorities. But what I see the priority positions are as the 2 justice support service positions, the CHIPS attorney and the investigator in the sheriff's office. I believe we can get to those 4 positions for 2024 budget. If you stick around, you can hear the rest of my spiel too.
Okay. On to the next item, item number 7, resolution establishing 2024 budget priorities. And Ken just kind of gave us a preview of what that's going to be.
Yeah, so what I heard, and you guys can correct me then if I heard it wrong, but what I heard at the committee of the whole was these 16 priorities in this order. And so where I think we're at is I can get through the first 6 of them. I'm pretty confident we can get those 6 positions or those 6 priorities funded with the $1 million that we have. I think at the end of the day, because there's always moving things within the budget, maybe the state will come out with additional funding for us. Maybe the net new construction will be higher than anticipated. Maybe Lisa will get me more money out of child support. So there's always other moving things. So I think we'll end up somewhere below 6, probably though above 13. I don't think we'll get below 12. I don't think we'll get there. That's why the previous resolution that approves those 4 additional sheriffs that's listed at 13 there is important. So we're going to move that up in the list, really. Because we wouldn't get there with funding. I can just tell you I'm good, but not that good. So we'll be somewhere between 6 and 12 then is where we'll end up at the end of the day. So this is how then I would make the decisions in the budget within this order. I'll just start going down the list, and when we run out of money, we're out of money. So does this list reflect the order that you want me to approve things in?
Supervisor Long.
I think the list is pretty accurate. I wondered if it's a number 5. Could we just say a COLA increase? I mean, 0.3, 1/3% is pretty chintzy, and I guess I'm really not comfortable with that. And that's just a reflection of the numbers that we came up with in the committee of the whole. I think the priority is correct, but I'm, hoping that that number will be something other than 1/3%. So could we just delete that part of it? What do you think, Audrey?
Okay, so we can. So what I would do differently then potentially is I would move 6 up to 5 because those inflationary expenses we don't have much choice on that. So I would potentially, looking at it now with the second set of eyes after having written it a few days ago, I'd probably move 6 up to number 5. And then you might want to consider whether you drop the COLA below the second justice support services or if you leave it there. So basically, get to the 4 funded positions I told you about, all of our fixed cost, take care of health insurance, and everything that's less than left over is basically going to go into COLA until I feel that that's at a satisfactory number. So those are some potential changes for you guys to consider.
Any thoughts from anyone else? No. None that you're going to share. That's right now. Yeah, Audrey.
So there's still more discussion to be had, but for number 3, the fund 1% increase to the health insurance premiums, I think that will be pretty spot on without having to make very many changes. So it'll still leave us with a pretty solid health insurance plan offered at really great premium rates. So that may be very close to all the money that we would need to kind of keep things as are. And if we needed to, right, make a couple changes to get below that 1%, that could be something that we could look at doing if we needed that extra expense to either fund positions or increase employee compensation. So
I had alluded to that when I went over the health insurance, and I showed you how the number was lower in
Right.
22 than 21. That's an 8% drop in claims experience. And so when you have an 8% inflationary factor and an 8% drop in experience, those come pretty close then to being able to maintain within 1%. So it's the good claims experience that's helping us right now.
Any other questions? So do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion to do this with the exception of moving, is it item number 6 to 5?
Yeah, I think that's what.
I think that's what we talked about. Then drop the .33 wording and the COLA increase on item 5.
All right, do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Long. Any other discussion? Yeah, I guess I would just add, if we could, anything we can find to increase the COLA, I think is really important for us from a retention standpoint. So for me, that's, hopefully it doesn't have to be 0.33%, because that's not going to be great. But all right, any other conversation? No? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion's carried. Thank you. Those are all our business items. Any requests for future agenda items?
Yes.
Supervisor Burning.
Well, first, my subject, is there any movement on that? Okay, never mind. No future agenda.
No future agenda items. I actually have one I would like to add. I would like us to talk about potentially creating a tuition reimbursement policy for potential retention. We're talking about a lot of challenges around compensation and things like that. But I'm thinking if we potentially had some kind of limited tuition reimbursement policy, that might help us retain employees and well. So that's something I'd like to talk about at a future meeting. Perhaps I can chat with Audrey about that too. All right. Any announcements or correspondence? No? Okay. Our date of our next meeting, May 16th, 2023. We are adjourned at 5:53. Thanks, everybody.